Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode two of the Startup Summer Series with the Guinness Enterprise Centre. So, this is where we interview members of our community within the startup and small business community in the GEC and hear their stories to date. And so, I'm delighted to be welcomed today by jewellery designer and business owner of EdgeOnly, Jenny Houston. But, Jenny, thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Good, good. How the last few weeks gone for you? This has been a crazy time.
Yeah, it's actually weirdly, it's been quite positive, and I
Yeah,
feel very lucky to be able to say that. I think people with e-commerce businesses are in a much better position than anybody that's in bricks and mortar retail. And I'm certainly very grateful that over the past year that we'd sort of focused an awful lot on the back end and design of our website, because it was a decision, it was a tricky decision last year whether or not to sort of go fully and really push the sort of wholesale side of the business, or to stick with focusing online first. And we chose to sort of focus more on online last year. So that's been fortuitous.
brilliant, brilliant. That's something we may touch on. And like you mentioned that you've been fortunate in some regards over the last number of weeks. And I mean the emergence probably of normal people and more so Paul Mescal's chain that has I think somewhere it has over 100,000 followers on Instagram has kind of opened this resurgence and interest in men's jewelry. Like this comes as no surprise to you, but maybe to some of the um, some of the other consumers around the country, maybe we didn't know it existed. But in underneath, you've probably seen heard this and
Yeah,
seen the
I
demand.
mean, men's necklaces have always been a really big thing for me, but predominantly in the UK and the US. So our number one selling necklace is a heavy curb chain. And what Connell's chain is sort of a light to medium weight curb chain. So I'm nearly sold out of that, which is both lovely and disastrous. So I've got more being
Yeah,
manufactured, being, rapidly, so as we speak.
yeah,
But yeah, it was our best selling necklace to begin with. And now, of course, I think literally what it has done is normalized jewelry, because I think for an awful lot of people, they think of men's jewelry as being fine if you're a rock star or an actor. Pop stars, rock stars, actors, it was sort of left for the people in Hollywood. But that's really not the case. And I think when you have a GAA kind of normal guy from Sligo wearing a necklace, and suddenly the allure of it, the fact nobody expected Connell's chain to be a breakout star from a TV series, but I think it's just made people realize how sexy a little something at the neck can be. It's a point of interest, I think, more than anything. And that's really what jewelry is. And it's as big for men as it is for women, nearly. And certainly for us, it is. It's 50% of EdgeOnly.
brilliant, brilliant. And like when we come into edge only, like for you as a kind of as a definition, how would you define edge only? What is edge only, and how does it differ from other jewelers or companies that offer necklaces, pendants, etc.?
We're an ethical luxury jewelry brand. So we design and manufacture jewelry for men and women, and they happen to be in edgier designs, but we still work with precious metals. So solid gold, platinum, we have diamond pave rings that move sort of more into alternative engagement rings. And a lot of the designs are leaning a little bit rock and roll. My background is in the music industry. I was a broadcaster as an indie rock DJ with RT2FM and sometime music TV presenter. So my world was surrounded by people that worked in film and TV and with musicians. And they dress casually, they dress in a way that's very cool. When they're on stage, they need something that stands out. And it's
Yeah,
the same for TV presenters and actors, whether they're doing the red carpet or they're interviewing somebody on TV, you want jewelry that stands out. And it can be really challenging to find jewelry that stands out, that is high quality. Usually that
yeah,
was in a costume jewelry space. So if you're somebody that wears things every day, you don't always want to be wearing costume jewelry. You don't want your fingers turning green or your neck turning green, and
yeah,
the plating wearing off, and then you're constantly replacing your jewelry. And not only is it sort of ugly to have a green figure, but it's a waste of money as well. So I just realized, for me and the people that I knew, both in the creative professions, but also in the tech space, I think the world has changed, and successful people often dress casually every day,
yeah.
predominantly casually every day. And even in finance, I think it's changing. I think an awful lot of, financial institutions that you had to be very formally dressed in suits, and they started with the sort of relaxed Friday dressing. But I think more and more people are trying to find a way to express their style and their individuality in a way that matches their status. And so for me, that was creating a high-end casual jewelry.
Good stuff. Yeah, that's actually probably that's a good point that you mentioned, like finance as well, about being able to express yourself. And that's probably a part of like well-being in work as well, is being able to show who you are as opposed to the standard shirt, tie, jacket.
Yeah.
Not there's anything wrong with that, but
No, and I think there was a period of time, probably 10 years ago, where the flamboyance for men could only really be through crazy socks or, a really funky tie. And we used to see that, Jon Snow on Channel 4 was always famous for a good tie, or, Graham Norton for like a flash of a colorful sock. But, if you're not a suit and tie guy, then maybe, or even if you are and you're not a colorful tie person, then
yeah,
a pair of cool cufflinks that from a distance just look like cufflinks, but then up close you see, oh, those are actually Phillips head screws, or those are lightning bolts, or it's a plectrum, because maybe really you would have loved to be a musician and you just ended up working in finance. So I
yeah.
think it's nice to kind of for people to be able to throw a nod to who they are in what they wear without having to be crazy about it.
Sure. So you mentioned there as well, Jenny, right? You were a DJ, you did a bit of presenting as well on TV. How did you decide, like, right, I'm gonna pack this in, which seems like a great career in terms of like traveling around, meeting musicians, playing cool music, and getting that live exposure. To then, you know what, I'm actually just gonna go and set up my own company, but specifically a very niche business in terms of jewelry. Like, how did you decide? Okay, going to draw a line under this and I'm going to do my own thing.
Yeah, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize about me is that I actually grew up in the jewelry industry. So my mother's a designer, goldsmith, and gemologist. She had both a fine jewelry design company and a jewelry manufacturing sort of production casting business in Canada when I was growing up. So I grew up really familiar with both. And throughout university, I always worked in fine jewelry stores, whether it was the diamond counter or an independent jewelry shop. So I knew an awful lot about luxury jewelry and high-end jewelry. And with my mother being a gemologist, I know a lot about gemstones just almost by osmosis. You sort of know all these things without thinking about it. And the fact that I wasn't wearing quality jewelry when I was a DJ kind of made me feel guilty, because a lot of fine jewelry is very conservative, or it's a little traditional for my liking. And if I wanted to wear a big lightning bolt necklace, or, pins at the neck and pins on my jackets and things like that, and chunky rings, that wasn't really there, or it was prohibitively expensive,
Yeah.
the sort of for the super, super, super high end, wealth, for red carpet jewelry or, gala jewelry. It wasn't for people like you and me on a day to day. So I really wanted something that was at that sort of fine jewelry level, but that was very wearable, that wasn't over the top, that wasn't reserved exclusively for the Met Gala,
Yeah.
So for me, I just felt that there was a gap there. I'd taken voluntary redundancy from RTE, and I was torn in university between doing entrepreneurial studies and doing arts administration, and I ended up doing arts administration. But um, opening business was always there. And I think with all that time in the music industry and at festivals and interviewing musicians and looking at how people dressed, and I really saw that there was a gap. I felt that men were being quite ignored in the jewelry space, that really there was sort of that classic but conservative jewelry, cufflinks and things like that for men that did work in finance or in the corporate world. And then there was kind of leather jewelry and skulls, like biker jewelry. And there was no in between. So it was biker or corporate. And,
Yeah.
most of the people I knew were in here. So people, it's funny because in a way, edge only and men's and women's rock and roll jewelry sounds niche, but it's very much a global niche. So it's a very large niche. It's very wearable. It's clean lines. very minimalist in style. You know, I don't do fussy jewelry. I like weight. I like quality to be there. I want that if somebody buys something that they can really enjoy it for years and years to come. And certainly when it comes to the carat gold space, it's really about investing in a piece that you're going to wear every day and that you'll have for a lifetime. And we all know that the gold is heirloom jewelry. It gets passed on through the generations. I think most of us have something from our grandparents by way of gold. So it's one of those things that that sticks around and maintains its value, you know.
And how do you decide, right? So when you get out, so you take the voluntary redundancy, right, and you have this idea of luxury jewelry, and this, how do you fund it? Because this stuff it probably isn't cheap to buy, and then in terms of having to put it together, right? So the Monday morning when you have your idea, everything's down in paper, this is going to be a roaring success, but oh crap, I actually need money to fund this thing. How did you go about doing that?
Yeah, initially was just sort of self-financed, and certainly then, you know, family and even friends, and then even to this day, it would be stocking loans from the bank, um, in order to sort of cash flow the Christmas spend. Because especially as you move more into the fine jewelry, even setting 5 platinum rings with diamonds or gold rings with, you know, with diamonds and rubies and sapphires, it's incredibly expensive. Gold has gone through the roof, you know, both with Brexit, whenever there's any upheaval in the world, let alone a pandemic, people really invest in gold. So gold is very, very expensive, and increasingly so. Silver has gone up, platinum's gone up, everything's gone up. So it's just one of those things that you try as best you can to sort of have your stock at a level that you can fulfill an order within a really reasonable time frame, but not overstock your safe with things that are going to tie up all of your cash flow. But it is tricky. You do sort of, certainly with the silver jewelry, I kind of keep quite a large volume of it. So cash flow is always challenging. Summertime is when you need the money to make the jewelry so that it's ready to be available for October and November. And, you know, December is too late. So you really need to be manufacturing in August and September and having everything in place to.
Sure. And like you've actually mentioned there like a number of challenges, and I want to come back into maybe the opportunity which you mentioned at the start of our conversation was, deciding to go the e-commerce route compared to the retail route. And traditional jewelers would have the traditional bricks and mortar stores, or would be on main streets around the city. You decided to maybe move away from that and go online. Was that a tricky decision for you to make? I mean, the benefit of hindsight now is that it was a very wise, good decision to make. But at the time, was it difficult for you?
It was, because I really think ultimately that you need both. When I started EdgeOnly, I knew it was niche, but I felt, again, it was a global niche. There's creative professionals working all around the world. So if you're in film, television, advertising, fashion, so I knew it was basically a big city brand to begin with, and that it would filter out from there. And that's been really consistent. My cities are London, New York, LA, increasingly Australia, Sydney and Melbourne and Milan. And so it's always the capital cities, it's fashion capitals. And I see that sort of consistently roll out. But when it came to sort of retail, I was going to be an online only brand, and I was very determined to do that. And I had to pivot very early on. I think really within 4 months, the feedback was, where can I try it on? Where can I try it on? Where can I try it on? And everybody kept asking me where they could try it on. And it was one of those frustrations that you don't want to hear, because you have in your head what your business is going to be. And then I realized that people really did want that opportunity. And it's not always that somebody is going to Google search, I need lightning bolt cufflinks. But when one sees lightning bolt cufflinks, suddenly then you're like, I need these in my life. So I had to sort of pivot very quickly and move to a wholesale model, so that I could sell to retailers and then also sell online. But retail is really expensive in the luxury space from the point of view, if you need an awful lot of point of sale imagery, a really brilliant display in order to do your brand justice. So rolling out that sort of bespoke display was going to be quite expensive. And it was tricky then to decide whether or not to roll out the finance that way, or to focus more on stock creation, particularly coming up to Christmas, and then online imagery. So it just at the time made better sense to have more stock.
Yeah.
and sort of the online imagery that I needed. So yeah, it's always sort of, I think with startups and scale ups, you know, any small business, you partly feel like you're trying to decide which child you're sending to college. You know, it's always like both need to go, both need to happen. But yeah, the online was the decision first, because at least, you know, obviously the margins are so much better. It made better
Sure.
sense to invest in that.
And like you say there about retail, okay, and if you're to have that shop front and having kind of nice designs and branding, especially in shop front, and that it can be so costly, how did you, like, not coming from this back or not coming in from this background, but I mean, I suppose when you emerged out of 2FM and out of radio, I mean, search engine optimization, social media, etc., was starting to come to the fore. So if we're to park the branding and the like getting relevant on a retail side on a high street to then trying to figure out how you go about SEO, about online branding. How did you manage to upskill on that? Like, did you have experience in that before, or did you take courses? How did you go about it?
Yeah, I took a lot of courses, but I think that when being a nighttime DJ, one of the things we always did, you know, we're sort of early adopters. You know, we were the first people with MySpace pages and Facebook pages so that we could publish our playlists and things like that. So long before the radio station had a website that enabled us to post things like that, we did it ourselves. So um, I was comfortable. I was, you know, on Twitter and things like that really early on. So I was kind of quite comfortable digitally, but certainly the minute I decided to open EdgeOnly, I sort of, with the local enterprise office, I signed up for loads of digital marketing courses and finance courses, absolutely everything. But I also made sure that I did a course every year to make sure that I was aware of maybe changes to the way Google search engine was crawling, what they were doing, making sure that I always sort of kept up to speed on what those dramatic changes sometimes can be. You know, you don't want to be doing the wrong thing, because very quickly people have tips and tricks on how to get ahead of SEO, and then 6 months later you can be penalized for doing those very same things. So
Yeah,
I mean, really, we just always try to focus on having authentic, informative, helpful content, you know, when it comes to jewelry, and doing blogs maybe on the ethics of gold mining, because that's a question that we were asked on our Instagram stories, or tips on how to get your ring size right. Because one of the challenges people have is that for online jewelry, and it's one of the trickiest things for us to do, is to help people get the right ring size when they're ordering online. And it's hard to explain, because it's nearly physics, that if you have a skinny ring, it's going to be a completely different, it's going to fit differently than a really wide ring. So that this ring is the equivalent of 3 of these. So you actually probably need to go 2 sizes up at least to get the same fit.
sure.
So trying to explain that the larger the ring, the wider the ring, the bigger the size, and to maybe try to put in the descriptions, if in doubt, go up a size or 2, and things like that, because it is really difficult, especially for people that aren't used to buying jewelry, or buying it for the first time, and really trying to have as much photography as possible to make things helpful. And then in saying that, with the SEO, just constant learning and updating of meta tags, and making sure that the photos are well tagged, making sure that everything is well labeled and well
Yeah.
done. You know, the things you do
And
wrong the first time and never do wrong again, you know.
but that's the best way to learn, like, I mean, it's very, I don't know, I find like you learn from mistakes, and that's kind of it's kind of one of the good things about being a naive person, is that you kind of learn them pretty quickly. So how did you go then? Like, you mentioned that you've got your primary markets be like London, New York, Milan, and further afield. How do you go about creating partnerships in those areas? Like, is that something that you kind of use your network from your previous career, or is it just putting yourself out there and meeting as many people, the right people as possible?
It's funny. I think in a lot of ways, it's just people have found the brand. Maybe they've been in London and bought a lightning bolt necklace, and then take it back to LA, and then get in touch with you about something else. So a lot of it's been really organic, partly down to the retailer that I chose to sort of work with from very early on in London. You know, Wolf and Badger's a store that we sell in London, and sold in New York, and we sell with them online as well. And thankfully, even throughout COVID-19, their online is really strong. So
Good.
it's still been really positive for us over the last sort of 8 weeks. But they have bricks and mortar retail in London and in New York. And then they also bought an e-commerce marketplace that had a strong reach in Europe. So they've got quite a strong reach all across. So I find that with partnerships like that, they buy from them the first time. But chances are, like everybody, we're all very savvy when we're online. So if you sort of go, I really like that check shirt. I wonder, I like this brand. I know my size in this brand now. I wonder what other colors they have that shirt in. So it's the same. So if they discover one of my rings when they're in London or New York, then chances are they might go, I wonder what else they have. And they'll go to my website next. So Gen Z, they don't bat an eye about jewelry, and
Yeah, true.
millennials don't really either. But I think it's sort of maybe the Gen X's kind of go, I'd like to do that, but I don't think I can pull it off. And I think with every younger generation, that feeling of I'm not sure if I could pull it off disappears, and you realize that you can definitely pull off something. You just have to figure out what your thing is. Maybe it's a simple ring, or
Yeah,
maybe it's a small chain, or nowadays, so many guys have their ears pierced. So we do men's earrings, we sell
yeah.
single earrings and things like that, whatever the market
What?
allows for.
Yeah, like there was definitely like, I mean, I think in my generation, showing my age here, but I think around like 2003, 2004 period, as we were going through school, and maybe in that kind of Generation Z phase now, like certainly like larger link chains like that you like a bracelet and necklaces were kind of, or sorry, necklaces, chains were sort of in vogue for a period of time, but quickly disappeared. So it's great to see like the re-emergence of what would be considerably more fashionable jewelry than just a large link chain as it was back then.
Nothing wrong
So
with a large thick chain. Yeah.
so what does the next few months, like the next 12 to 18 months look like for you, Jenny? Like, you know, you're in 5.5, you'll be six, would you be 6 years this year? 6 years this October?
End of October will be 6. Yeah. So it's been about sort of expanding the sort of digital marketing. We've spent so much time on organic SEO over the last year, and really only started spending very recently, just in November, and just tiny amounts really. So just really pushing that sort of online digital marketing spend now that we have a sort of a better set of collateral, I suppose. It was creating imagery, editorial imagery, cutout imagery, modeled, and as well as e-commerce scale sort of imagery. It takes time and money, to get it right. And right now, unfortunately, we can't do any photo shoots, but hopefully
Yeah,
we'll be able to by the end of the summer, because there's so many gaps that I'd love to fill. But just really pushing it out more to more markets, and trying to drive the online, and then also developing doing some more work on the website, really just to make it as user friendly as possible and to automate as much as possible. And we do things like custom hand engraving and things like that, and at the moment that requires an email, so making sure that somebody can fill that out in a box, that there's opportunities for them to do that. So just to add that extra little bit of coding to the back end, and automation to the sort of the marketing and the sort of customer service side of the business, to sort of minimize as many emails as we can, so that we can sort of focus on all those other things.
cool, good stuff. And are you by yourself at the moment, or do you have a member of
No,
the team?
yeah, I've got digital marketing with me, and sort of working on expanding that role, and then maybe adding some administrative, making sure that there's somebody in place for that busy autumn period. That the
Yeah,
packaging gets pretty insane around sort of October. So yeah, so sort of building towards that, and doing sort of business expansion grants and things like that in order to hire. So scaling is kind of terrifying and also kind of really gratifying at the same time, being able to two heads think so much better than one. So it's been really amazing for me having people on board since last summer. The difference on just being able to bounce an idea off of somebody is fantastic. So I'm delighted to have people around and people in the office. Stop talking to
perfect.
myself.
Yeah. I know, I hear you. No, I know it's nice to have a sounding board there just to make sure
Yeah,
that you're on the
yeah.
on the right track. Es-
My
Especially
goal
during
is all off-site, so I work with an awful lot of people. There's so many people involved in making a piece of jewelry, but they're not in the office with me.
yeah,
So it's nice having sort of the sort of core office team expanding.
yeah. I suppose that's been kind of the fun thing about the that I found actually in the GEC itself, is that, like, I mean, if you need to get away from the office maybe for 5 or 10 minutes, you can nip down to grab a coffee from Ray and have a chat and just kind of get what you need to get out, and then go back with a clear head.
The cafe
And
is a great thing.
hopefully,
Just an
hopefully that's how it is.
excuse for 2 flights of stairs going to the cafe. You know, it's I kind of miss running up and down the stairs actually with all this working from home.
Yeah, I noticed on my my Garmin watch that it kind of tracks how many flights of stairs you go up and down. Like it's drastically down over the last few weeks. So that hopefully that'll increase there once we go back in. But
Yeah.
Jenny, if people are going to buy or they're interested in Edge Only jewelry, where can they go?
EdgeOnly.com is the best, our own website. So whether you type in .ie or whatever, you'll still go to .com. So absolutely everything is available through our own website, and then um, through a number of partners sort of worldwide. But we ship via DHL internationally, and we have free shipping through Unpost. So we're able right now to deliver pretty much next day in Ireland, and internationally it's sort of 2 to 4 days on average, which is great. We're really lucky.
Cool. And are you guys still running your shipping offer over 100 quid?
Yep,
Oh,
it's
yep.
yeah, free shipping really with every purchase over 100. So
Great stuff.
yeah, it's yeah, makes it easy. Get
Good stuff. Well, look, Jenny, thanks a million for taking the time to come out and chat to us. Hopefully, we'll be able to grab a coffee in the GC sooner rather than later.
Yes,
But in the meantime, take care and thanks a million for joining us again today.
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a million.